What is Islamophobia? And being an atheist Jew who is not and never was Muslim, why should I in any way be concerned about it? Well, that was the topic of one of the older videos on this channel titled, Why Should a Jewish Atheist Fear Islamophobia? You can find a link to it in the YouTube video description area of this video. The thing about the term Islamophobia, though, is that there is indeed a thing that it validly refers to, but it also gets thrown around a lot for nefarious purposes too, such as silencing valid criticism of Islam. This, of course, is problematic, because like other religions, there is much about Islam that needs to be called out and criticized. But key words, like other religions. Islam does not have a monopoly on deeply problematic teachings, nor has it a monopoly on deeply problematic behavior of its adherents. To pretend otherwise is to turn a blind eye to all kinds of abuses, as long as the religion perpetuating them is not Islam. At any rate, it would be expected that one hear the term Islamophobia invalidly thrown around to the end of Muslim apologetics. But one purpose that I never expected that I would see the term thrown around for is Christian. That's right, Christian apologetics. But sure enough, David Wood of Acts 17 Apologetics recently put out a video doing exactly that, which I will discuss in just a moment. Hello, Internet. This is Sophia, the Red Angel, doing my best on this channel to produce content that is worth your time to watch and listen to. This time, I bring you my commentary on a video by Act 17 Apologetics titled, Honest Muslim Explains Islamophobia. Now, I have seen Act 17 Apologetics make claims that are well into the range of the absurd, but this video goes beyond that into the range of the downright creepy. Here is how he begins.
Islamophobia has been defined as a word created by fascists and used by cowards to manipulate morons.
For starters, at best, that is a description of the word, not a definition of it. But furthermore, it is a shoddy one at that. I do not know where he derives the assertion that the word is created by fascists, aside from possibly repeating something that is said by many like him. As for the word being used by cowards to manipulate morons, well, I do not argue with the assertion that the word does get used like that. But from the way David Wood is talking about the term, one would think that it has no life outside of that misuse, and that is an insinuation that I do dispute.
We normally hear the word Islamophobia when we object to Islam's call for the violent subjugation of the entire world, or to Muhammad having sex with a prepubescent girl, or to the Quran allowing Muslims to beat their wives into submission, as if there's something wrong with us for having an objection to slaughtering unbelievers in the name of Allah, or raping little girls, or beating women.
That is definitely not how I usually hear the term used. At least not usually. I have heard the term used more to refer to attempts to punish Muslims just for being Muslim, or to penalize people who are not Muslim but might get mistaken or otherwise mixed up with Muslims. For example, one thing that I have heard described as Islamophobic is Trump's attempt to stop immigration from certain Muslim countries, albeit not others, a ban that was aimed at fulfilling his campaign promise to halt Muslim immigration. It is, of course, a no-brainer that this travel ban did not only affect Muslims, but would affect anyone from those countries trying for any reason to get into the United States. This could include, among others, people trying to get to the US precisely in order to escape from Islamic rule. That's right, there could have been atheists, even Christian victims of Islamophobia. There is another way that the term can be used in a non-problematic, and I would add important way, is to refer to cases where the critiques made of Islam exceed the bounds of rationality. Do not get me wrong, there is plenty that is problematic about Islam, but Islam does not have a monopoly on such problematic things, and as such, a rational critic of Islam cannot give other religions a free pass. Granted, when you hear someone say something critical of Islam, it can be difficult to know whether or not the same person yesterday criticized Christianity, religious Buddhism the day before, Sikhism the day before that, and rabbinical Judaism the day before that. Furthermore, nobody can cover every topic, so allowances have to be made for some commentators who, in their criticism of the problematic things in religion, specialize in the criticism of Islam. There are legitimate reasons why some critics of religion might choose to specialize in such an area. But when the critic of Islam is someone who clearly is giving a free pass to Christianity, then that is clearly an example of the criticism of Islam exceeding the bounds of the rational, arguably the most common way of it doing so, and therefore I would call that Islamophobic too. Who are the victims of that kind of Islamophobia? Well, for starters, those could include the LGBTQI people in many parts of the United States, especially the Bible Belt, that you are completely forsaking because the religious extremists who regularly assault their existence are from a religion other than Islam. That said, I've also heard the uses of the term Islamophobia in not so legitimate manners, namely, to disparage criticism of Islam without examining the merit of the criticism. But to put that in perspective, I have also, and far more frequently, heard the term persecution of Christians used to refer to our objection to having laws based on conservative Christian morality imposed on all of American society, such as the ban that there was for a long time on same-sex marriage. I have even, also with much greater frequency, heard the effort to give due recognition to non-Christian holidays of the early winter season referred to as a war on Christmas. Now, don't get me wrong. The fact that terms like persecution of Christians get thrown around invalidly does not make it okay that the same is done with terms such as Islamophobia. But would you suggest that the term persecution of Christians be retired altogether because of that? After all, even though there is nothing that really happens in the United States to which it properly refers, actual persecution of Christians does happen elsewhere in the world, in parts of the Middle East, for instance. For that reason, we need the term persecution of Christians to remain in our vocabulary. Yes, we must call it out when it is misused, but that is not a reason why we should not be open to using it when it properly deserves to be used. My point is that the same is true for the term Islamophobia. Yes, the term also sometimes gets thrown around invalidly and for nefarious, manipulative purposes, but there are still situations for which the term is very properly used, and therefore it too should not be written off altogether.
But one Muslim recently posted an honest comment about Islamophobia.
And how exactly do you determine that this Muslim is being honest when he writes about Islamophobia and others are not? Do you read their minds to know whether or not they actually believe what they are saying? What? Is telepathy now one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit that I have not yet heard about? Or are you simply dismissing all those who say things that do not jive with your preconception as either wrong or dishonest, and insist that only those who say what does jive with your preconceptions can possibly be telling the truth?
Mansour wrote, "Many Muslims just don't want to accept that they themselves are Islamophobes. The definition only works for them as they are afraid of true Islam while claiming to believe in it. Kuffar who are afraid of Islam don't have a phobia. They have every reason to fear Islam."
Let me give you a slight introduction to this Al-Mansur guy whom David Wood is referencing on Twitter. I went ahead and looked at that guy, and calling him creepy would be a super extreme understatement, an insult to creepazoids everywhere. On July 27, 2021, he tweeted, "Muslims are not represented by some nobody from the UK. The problem with the boy in the video is, by his reasoning, he must condemn Islam. Consider, by his logic, the woman in the hadith didn't deserve it. The real reason the boy in the video is condemning is either he is a heretic, or he just doesn't want to be implicated in a legal case which makes him a cowardly heretic." We can see Muslims literally mocking what happened to the filth, so don't let @SmilesMando change Islam for his apostate fantasy. But who is he referring to as some nobody from the UK? He is referring to another Muslim who recorded a video and released it 2 days before on Twitter, condemning an attack on a Christian apologist who was wearing a t-shirt with a Charlie Hebdo cartoon on it. I do not know what to gather from this, but can I assume from this that this Al-Mansur guy considers this attack to be permissible? You see, in the tweet in which he denounced that guy as some nobody from the UK, he attached an image of a story of Muhammad condoning a guy's decision to kill a woman in cold blood for criticizing Muhammad. Again, I cannot say definitively that this Al-Mansur guy is condoning the attack, because he is still giving himself what may be considered room for plausible deniability, but it sure seems to me like he is condoning it. And as I scroll through more and more of his Twitter feed, I see more and more about how this Al-Mansur guy is way beyond merely creepy. I could go on, and maybe in a future video I might, but for now, suffice to say, he is not a nice guy. In the tweet that David Wood cites, he ends it by saying, "Kuffar, i.e. non-believers, who are afraid of Islam, do not have a phobia. They have every reason to fear Islam." If that is not an insinuation of threat of physical violence, I do not know what is. To say the least, this is not someone I would want to have coffee with, to say the least. So yes, this Al-Mansur guy is the bottom of the barrel. But is he honest in the tweet that David Wood cites? Well, I cannot read his mind, but I have every reason to suspect that he is honest about his condemnation of all Muslims who disagree with his extremist interpretation of the religion, including his assertion that their dissent is rooted in some irrational fear of what he considers to be the only authentic form of Islam. But is he reasonable? No. Just as there exist Christians who do not support homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, etc., but who nonetheless are indeed following Christianity as they understand it, there are no doubt Muslims who do not share this al-Mansur guy's fanatical interpretation of Islam. It is not that they consider this al-Mansur guy's version of Islam to be the true version of Islam and simultaneously fear it, but they honestly do not consider it to be the one true version of Islam. Granted, even where the more reformed Muslims are concerned, they are still believing in the completely unsubstantiated assumption of a supernatural being who supposedly created the entire universe with some kind of purpose in mind, who cares what we do and do not do with our lives. So in that sense, there is no branch of Islam that is completely rational. But that too can be said about Christianity as well. Even the most progressive of Christians believes in a supernatural being who not only created the entire universe, but also sent his son down to earth to temporarily die for some kind of benefit for humankind.
A phobia is an irrational fear, so Islamophobia would be an irrational fear of Islam.
Okay, so far there I agree with you, 100%. That generally is also how I would go about differentiating legitimate criticism of Islam from Islamophobia.
But there's nothing irrational about fearing an ideology that calls for violence, oppression, and cruelty. People who don't want to be subjugated are generally rational, not irrational, so it makes no sense to call them Islamophobes.
Absolutely right. But once again, somebody who fears the ideology for such rational reasons should also fear other ideologies that have the same problem.
But Muslims who fear the truth about Islam do have an irrational fear. They fear the truth about something that they believe in. They believe it's wrong to have sex with prepubescent girls, but they believe in a God and a prophet who say it's okay to have sex with prepubescent girls. They believe it's wrong to rape female captives, but they believe in a God and a prophet who say it's okay to rape female captives. They believe it's wrong to execute someone for changing religions, but they believe in a God and a prophet who order them to execute people for changing religions. They believe in freedom of religion, but their God and their prophet don't. They believe in freedom of speech, but their God and their prophet don't. They have Christian friends when their God and their prophet tell them not to. In other words, their minds are filled with contradictions. They simultaneously believe in Islam and reject Islam. That is irrational.
You say that their mind is filled with contradictions because they simultaneously believe in Islam and reject Islam? No. It looks like it is time for an installment of Fallacy Exposed. And your fallacy is equivocation. It is a fallacy that you commit when you switch around between two or more definitions of a term throughout the course of your argument. It is a fallacy whose problematic nature is made clear when you displace each instance of the term you are playing around with a more precise term, each one specifying exactly what the term means in that part of the argument. In this case, the term that you are taking such liberties with is Islam. You're using the term to refer to two different variants of Islam that stem from very different understandings of the underlying Islamic source tradition. You say they simultaneously believe in Islam and reject Islam, but the correct way to say it would be they simultaneously believe in liberal or moderate Islam and reject fundamentalist radical Islam. When the sentence is expanded in that manner, your equivocation is exposed, and your assertion that these people's minds are filled with contradiction falls to pieces. This is because the religion that they believe in and the religion that they reject are not the same thing, despite the fact that they both can be referred to as Islam.
It seems then that non-Muslims don't have an irrational fear of Islam, while many Muslims do have an irrational fear of Islam.
Some Muslims who fear Islam do so rationally. Fear of the direct danger posed by radical fundamentalist Islam can be rational, but when it is based on sound reason, which it would have to be in order to not be Islamophobia, then that same reason would also lead to someone being wary of what radical fundamentalist Christianity would do given the opportunity. Also, the argument can be made that any embrace of unsubstantiated belief can set the dangerous precedent that it is okay to suspend the demand that your beliefs be substantiated. Therefore, one can also fear that even moderate or liberal Islam can be a gateway drug of sorts to radical fundamentalist Islam. But once again, if that fear is based on sound reason, again, a requirement if it is not to be deemed Islamophobia, then it too would be grounds to have that same concern regarding other liberal and moderate religions, including liberal Christianity. Granted, radical Islam does wreak havoc in many countries on a level that no nation has seen from Christianity in our lifetimes, and that may be a valid reason for some critics of religion to focus more on their criticism of Islam than on their criticism of other religions. But we need to remember, this is only because Christianity has not had the opportunity to wreak this kind of havoc in the lifetimes of anyone alive today. In historical times when it had that opportunity, it did so. And replacing oppression from one religion with the same kind of oppression from a different religion is not overall progress.
Hence, our Muslim friends are the real Islamophobes.
Highly unlikely. They have good reasons to fear radical fundamentalist Islam, and they are not likely to give a free pass to radical fundamentalist Christianity. On the latter count, I am not so sure about you.
If they want to rid themselves of their irrational fear of Islam, there are two ways to do it. First, they can actively embrace all of Islam's horrible teachings and rid themselves of all resistance against Islam's horrible teachings. This is what the Quran commands them to do. Indeed, the Quran says that you're not really a Muslim until you fully embrace everything that Allah and Muhammad command. Allah declares in Surah 33, verse 36, "It is not for a believer, man or woman, when Allah and His Messenger have decreed a matter, that they should have any option in their decision. And whoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger, he has indeed strayed in a plain error." And in Surah 4, verse 65, we read, "But know, by your Lord, they can have no faith until they make you, O Muhammad, judge in all disputes between them, and find in themselves no resistance against your decisions, and accept them with full submission." So, one way to escape Islamophobia is the Islamic way, believing and doing everything Allah and Muhammad command.
But how is one to interpret everything that Muhammad and Allah supposedly command? Just as in Christianity, different people identifying as Muslims can have different understandings of how to do this and still be equally sincere. Anyway, even if you explain how radical fundamentalist Muslims arrive at their interpretation of Islam, that does not change the fact that radical fundamentalist Islam is not the thing that our more liberal and moderate friends believe in. And just because their liberal or moderate religion traces itself back to the same rather old tradition as the religion of the radical fundamentalist Muslims does not invalidate their very sound reason for fearing radical fundamentalism. Anyway, from this point on, David Wood really just digs his heels in and builds on the conclusions of an argument that I have already shown to be bunk. Continuing my review past this point would, in my opinion, serve no purpose other than making my review longer than it needs to be. so I will rest it here. I hope that you enjoyed my video. Please make sure that you click the like button and leave your comment in the comments area below. Share this video, subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell. Also, if you are interested in this channel's official Discord server, there is a link in this video's YouTube video description area pointing to a page on my blog that gives more information about it, including the invite link to the Discord server. My blog also provides other subscription options that you can use in addition to subscribing here. I mean, I still want you to subscribe here because it will help my channel, but you can do other things in addition, just so that you will not be too reliant on YouTube's algorithm to see my future videos. Check out those options too. And until next time, see ya!